Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Star and Flurry, or welcome back. Straighten everything. Sorry about my wrinkles. Okay, so here's the deal. For the last week, I decided a week ago I was going to do a daily reading every day and then post it at the end of the week. But what I found out is that when I do readings, especially if I'm talking, I end up doing a story time. so I tried to keep it, I even set a timer at one point, just 10 minutes. But that was ineffective. Because I guess I'm just a storyteller for now. Anyways, yeah, so I have like 2 hours or some such recorded material. And I'm not very good at taking notes. This whole YouTube thing, man, you just learn along the way. I mean, I should probably take a course or something or watch other YouTube videos telling me how to do this, but I didn't. And it's interesting because when you're telling stories that are popping up because of some reading, you're not paying attention to what you've already said. And so I found that I repeated a couple of stories. Sorry. I also got really mixed up on the days because there were a couple where I recorded a really good one, let's say, and then it turns out that I hadn't recorded it. That, I went to hit the stop button and it started going, and I'm like, oh crap. And so, what I thought was a really good reading and a good connecting with some stories turned out to never be recorded. And so I don't know about anybody else, but for me, this takes kind of, especially when reflecting on the past, it takes a fair amount of kind of emotional energy. And so you get done doing one, you just don't want to do it again. Plus, you really liked what you said the last time, so you're afraid you're not going to do as well. And this time is, and then so all of a sudden I end up with like 2 day 4s and no day 5. Because I re-recorded a few here and there. So, and then multiple stories, or multiple telling of stories, which was just like, okay, that's boring. And so I'm going to start taking notes on what I say so I don't wander into that territory again, at least not, for 6 months or whatever. So we're going to do this daily, and we're going to record it daily and post it daily so that I can stay on top of everything. And I'm going to take good notes about what I freaking talk about so that I don't repeat so you don't come back tomorrow and go, we just heard this story, Nancy. We don't want to hear it again. Unless it's super funny, then I might tell it again. But, and I have, God knows I have a few of those. But, so that's where we're going to start. So, the other format I figured out that I really enjoy doing is I've been working through the Darkside Skeleton Tarot Guidebook Workbook by Philip Young, I think was his name. Now I got to check, make sure I got his name right. I have it written down here somewhere. Or do I? I did. I don't know where it is. I think, yeah, there it is. Philip Young from DeBry. I just like the way he writes. I think this workbook is a repeat of one that they published earlier for another deck, it's new to me. So for those of you who are familiar with it, you'll know it. What I like about the format is, start here, he does the meaning of the card, the symbolism on, this is referring to the Skeleton Tarot, but I might use that at one of these days, but I'm not using it today. And then an upright meaning, a reverse meaning, then the author's personal connection with this card, and then he gives you a little writing prompt, or for me, a storytelling prompt. And sometimes I tell a story, sometimes I don't. A couple of them have kind of like, well, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I'll get back to you. So we'll try to keep these to a half hour or less if I can. It might be even shorter. Hopefully it won't be long. So what I do is I basically throw 3 oracles, 3 tarots, do the workbook, and then if I have a relatable story that affects me per his prompt, I will tell it. And so to start with, I was going to start with that, but I'm going to start with this instead. Runners of the Sun Oracle, which it's like the most beautiful day here today, and I'm so excited. And I'm going to a concert tonight, which I'm very excited about. I'll tell you later. my old-time favorites. So, Runners of the Sun. And let's put these, so I'm going to use Runners of the Sun. I'm going to bring this down so y'all can see the throw here. Get it straight. So we'll do one more. I love this deck because I love the cardstock. I love the shuffle. I love the images. I love the titles. And then the guidebook is great too. Not too wordy, but you know, and I love the sound. The delectable sound. Okay, so first card is the Moon. Am I showing that right side up? I am. Offering. And Make Your Move. I actually have a wooden chessboard just like this that I picked up in a thrift store in Cle Elum, Washington, where I lived. Well, I didn't live full time, but I had a little place there, which is really a wonderful escape from the city of Seattle. So let's read the quick meanings of these. So 36. The Moon, always see or seem, is but a dream within a dream. Some conscious thoughts are floating to the surface of still waters. And wow, isn't that true? These readings for this past week have brought up so many reflections. And it's just been so many past reflections of work and my dad and my mom and all of that. And it prompted me to call my ex-boss, who I talk about a lot, who after he left the company, he changed my life when he came to the company, and he changed my life when he left the company. And it prompted me to reach out to him. He's one of these people that I will always love to death, but we never talk, and we see each other. I think the last time I saw him was 4 years ago when I was down in LA. I reached out and said, I'm going to be here. You better make time, which he did. And we had a wonderful afternoon. But that's like the last time I saw him. I don't even know when that was, 2015, 2016. I don't know. And then I text him. It's always me. He never reaches out, but I always reach out. And I text him. I usually just briefly say, "You alive?" And today he responded back to me, and we had a brief little text chat and agreed to talk, which we never do. He'll always say, "Yeah, let's have a phone call," and I'll say, "When's a good time to call?" And then I never hear from him again for another year and a half. But I love him nonetheless. I'll never hold it against him. That's our friendship. Anyway, so floating to the surface. Let me get it. Subconscious thoughts are floating to the surface of the still waters. Unrecognizable emotions are bubbling forth. Boy, isn't that true? The Moon represents the things that we can't always see, but are ever present. While these visions and specters may seem dark, they are just as illuminating as the bright sun. Boy, never been a more right statement there. I agree with that completely. Let me read it again. While these visions and specters may seem dark, they are just as illuminating as the bright sun. These are the emotions that we have pushed down, which are now coming to light. Be still and process what you are feeling. The only way out is through. And the three keywords are mystery, emotion, and clandestine. And it's so weird that that's coming up, because that's exactly what I've been going through. I mean, it's almost like when I talk to YouTube, it's like, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to put this burden on you guys, but it's like a therapy, where you're kind of talking with somebody, just listening and not necessarily responding, or trying to fix you, or just trying to tell you what a certain emotion means, or a certain, they're just not trying to decipher. Nobody's trying to decipher my life. I'm trying to decipher my life. And there's and as I've always said, when you talk out loud, it's so much different than noodling it around in the carnival that is your head, because there's just so much static up there, so much, just so much. Those intrusive thoughts of, no, that's not right. You're not remembering that right. Blah blah blah. I think human beings are. We talk about getting gaslight. We are so good at gaslighting ourselves. So, yeah. So, anyways, this is so. Be still and process what you're feeling. The only way out is through. Boy, I like this card a lot. Okay, so offering 32. Make an offering. Connect with a deity you identify with. Choose someone who can amplify qualities in yourself you'd like to bring forward and aid you on your path. Create ritual to offer up your gratitude for their help guiding and inspiring you. Research what a traditional offering to this deity or guide is and set your altar. Okay. Honoring history, reverence are the keywords. Make your move. Number 11. Make your move. The time for careful planning is coming to an end. You've weighed the pros and cons. You've brainstormed the possible outcomes. And now it's time to make your move. You can't control what happens next. You just need to trust and go for it. If it doesn't go as planned, it's because there's something else in store that's even better. Either way, congratulate yourself for not getting in your own way. I'm so freaking good at that. Aren't we all? Action, anti-perfectionism, and go for it. Great little guidebook. Runners of the Sun. Thank you, Thea, at Green Garden. Green Garden Goddess Tarot for recommending this deck. I truly adore it, and I'm having so much fun with it. Okay, so of course the tarot. We're going to start this. I'm going to do this for 7 days in a row. I was thinking this is like what is it at Christmas time? They go Vlogmas. This is going to be Tarotmas in the middle of summer, just for a week. But putting out a video once a day is a task, I think. In my opinion. We'll turn this guy upside down. So he's right side up to you guys. Okay, so we're going to shuffle. For those unfamiliar, the Green Bee Tarot is a tarot I made. It's kind of an analog, what do they call it? Analog collage deck, which I then, because it was, literally glued and pasted together on bad poker-sized cardstock, that I ended up scanning everything and digitizing it and putting it on make playing cards. I can't sell it because I don't own the images. Not that anyone would buy it, but it has prompted me to make another one and try to do it with my art, my own art. I've gone back and forth about I really like the idea of a black and white deck because there's a card in here. I'm going to dig it out before I pull this one. Oh, 3 is right here. King of Cups. I just love this image so much, and I love the way it looks in the deck. And so I think a black and white photography deck would be really, really fun. King of Cups, I think I've told this story before, but King of Cups was one of the first images I saw, and I knew exactly who he was going to be. I mean, it was just like, oh, there's a King of Cups. It's so interesting how these images presented themselves. It was almost magical in retrospect. It was almost magical because honestly, I didn't have to fight for any of the images. There's only one image in here that I'm semi-unhappy with, and the more I look at it, the more I'm not unhappy with it. So it's growing on me, I guess is the best way to say it. And that's the Six of Swords. Okay, so these are on top. These are my clarifying cards, and the first card is the Seven of Wands. Actually, one of my favorite cards, really. I love the look in his eyes. This is a fight. This isn't the Five of Wands. This is the Seven of Wands. He's not yet to the Nine of Wands. I just love this. I love that. I love that image. Under the offerings, 10 of Coins. How interesting is that? And I picked this card because it just looked foundational. Like the base of the rock formation, or I think it's more like it's like a rock sculpture. Well, there's a name for these things that are sculptures out of rocks that are piled on top of each other. But it just looked like it had a super strong foundation. And I like that about the 10 of Coins. The legacy of the 10 of Coins is how I think of it. Ooh, and the moon appears again. I also like this one. It looks mysterious. No dogs or lobsters, but the feelings there, and you know what the moon means. And it's so interesting that it's coming up crosswise from this. Isn't that interesting? Ooh, ah, so make your move. Make your move. And I'm going to go back to the moon card on this one again. Ah, yeah, reflections, mystery, emotion, clandestine, making reflections. Yeah, it's so interesting that this is like a mirror. 7 of Wands. Okay, let's read what the handbook has to say about the 7 of Wands. 7 of Wands. You are right. Hold your ground. Any lack of integrity will be your downfall. Symbolism. Oh, we don't want to. The symbolism he talks about is in reference to this deck, the Darkside Skelet Tarot, which I'm not using today. Upright. Courage and valor. Courage and valor. The author's personal connection with this card. During my relationships journey, I have dated interracially, which was not always a popular decision with some of my peers, and ended some friendships. Ugh, that's... Ugh. I have no problem standing my ground for what I believe in and know to be right. On many occasions, I tend to go my own way, and each time I do, I see the meaning of this card clearly. Interesting. Okay. Personal connection with this card. This is the writing prompt. When have you had to defend your beliefs and use the higher ground to ward off the ignorance of others? Well, interestingly enough, most of my stories have to either do with work or my family. So, because don't they all? I think the most one where I had to defend, when you've had to defend your beliefs and use the higher ground to ward off the ignorance of others. God, there's 2 stories that come to mind. But my restaurant, but I think I can tell this one. My restaurant, shortly before I left, actually, just really a month or 2 before I left, decided that they were going to be the first through the wall, or certainly one of the first through the wall, especially in Seattle, of going to a no tipping policy. There's many reasons for that, but one of which is that the restaurants in general have really... The whole system the financial system is screwed up, because every time a restaurant raises their prices, the servers also get a raise, because people tip off their check, basically, generally speaking. Not everybody, but generally speaking. They tip off the check before tax. 15 to 20%. So when the restaurant goes in and does a 2 or 3% hike in prices, the servers also get to take advantage of that. Well, not take advantage, they just get a little raise as well. Yay. But the problem is there's a lot more that goes on in a restaurant than just the servers. Now, granted, they are the face of the company. That is for sure. I mean, they're out there. It's some of the hardest work out there. Anybody who's done it for any length of time knows. It's just fun, especially if you're in a big tourist-driven restaurant where it's just mayhem, which was what ours was. You work your butt off. So the servers earn every penny they get, and so I'm not knocking them. They are blessed to have kind of the system on their side. Who does not have the system on their side, although, is the rest of the people. The front desk, anybody who's not in a service tippable position, the front desk and the kitchen, mainly, and they don't get to take advantage of those raises. And the restaurants, because of the thin, I know people think restaurants, and there's some out there that do, fast food particularly, but in a full service restaurant, the profit margins are nothing. I mean, seriously, nothing. Yeah, it's incredible how little they make. A nickel, a dime, maybe off every dollar spent. I mean, it's just, and so you're scraping for every dollar. So the thing that doesn't happen is, it's not that the kitchen gets a raise of 2 or 3% when the restaurant is raising their prices. The restaurant is almost always raising their prices, because they never want to do that. Almost always raising their prices because of increased either overhead or cost of product to bring into the restaurant. And so, yeah. And then you add in a high minimum wage, which the city of Seattle put in place. And the restaurants just felt, the owners felt that they really couldn't, well, number one, pay that wage on top of everything else and balance out the kitchen wages. Well, the kitchen also was getting that raise. It was just a hard balancing situation. So they decided that they were going to. I'm trying not to get too technical because I'm sure you don't care. But in the end, what they decided to do was go with no tipping. They were just going to not let people tip, and they were going to raise it, literally charge on the menu the cost of what it took to run the restaurant and pay everybody. Now the servers were still basically getting 20% of their sales, basically. So they're still getting tipped, but it's being, and my company, I never question my company's integrity in terms of taking in money for a server and giving back to them. They did that right. You hear a lot of horror stories, but no, we were not one of them. So the servers would make their 20% or whatever off their sales, and that was part of their deal. And then the kitchen was able to also get raises and take part in other raises that were occurring. It just was balancing the wage table in the restaurant. So that's what they decided to do. So getting back to the defending my beliefs, I did not like that idea. I was really against it, and I voiced it often and frequently, as best I could. I mean, I want and I'll tell you why. Because I don't think, basically what was happening is the servers were making 20% across the board. And I didn't believe that guests, number one, would appreciate being told what how do I say this? Guests ended up having a very difficult time separating the cost of the product on the menu and the fact that they didn't get to tip anymore. They liked to partake. That's the subjectivity of this business, and that is that's the thorn in everybody's side when they try to reinvent this system. Because in America, in the United States, people want to tip. They want to punish a server or a restaurant for doing poorly, but in the end, punishing a server, or awarding them mediocrely, or tipping them well if the evening was a banner success. But the thing is, there's so many subjective things involved in that. You don't like the look of the server. You think the server's flirting with your husband or wife. I mean, there's a million things that has nothing to do with what's actually going on, because servers just don't do that. At least most of the ones I worked with did. But there's just so much subjectivity, and people didn't want to let that power of tipping go. And the other question was, are we actually providing 20% service every time? And I didn't believe we were. And that's a hard sell to a restaurant that prides themselves on their service. But I don't think we were. Were we really providing that excellence in service to require a 20% across the board to every server in the building? I didn't think we were. And I felt we were being obnoxious by telling people we were. So the company had this was not a popular opinion, by the way. And so the company had a company meeting within the store saying, we want to talk to you about this and see how you feel about it. But the annoying thing about that is, I know this company well enough, and I also knew from the moment the meeting started that the decision had already been made. This was not a fact-finding mission. This wasn't an opinion-finding mission. This was we're presenting the idea and want you to talk amongst yourselves, and then we've already made the decision. And so I posed the question, and I did this much to my detriment, probably. Posed the question. I said, and the servers were in the room, but I think they knew what I meant. I said, are we really providing 20% service every single moment of every single day, especially when things went wrong, which they did in that restaurant, because we sat, in the summer, The restaurant alone sat 350. Add in a 70 top banquet. We had a barge that opened up in the summertime, which added another 100 seats, and then a deck off the main restaurant, which sat 60. So what is that? 350, 410, 470, 570 people. And we would do 11, 12, 1,300 covers, maybe even more a night. Things are going to go wrong. They just do. It's a hard push on the kitchen. It's just a hard push in the restaurant. It's hard to do that well. We did very well, I think. But we weren't perfect. And our servers weren't perfect. And not all of them were, at every moment of every service experience, were 20% worthy, in my opinion. And I think most of the servers I talked to, I did talk to some of them. I said, do you think this? And they were like, no, we're not. We're not always. I have bad nights. We have bad nights. The restaurant has bad nights. Yeah, no. So I just felt we were making an assumption, or the way in which a guest, this is how I was as a guest. I was putting myself in a guest position. And I said, this is just going to open up a world of complaints, because they're going to say, I don't want that 20%. Take that off my bill or whatever. We didn't add it separately. It was added into the price of the meal. But because we were doing something different, they had this long-winded explanation on the menu about what we were doing, and that 20% figure got noted in there somewhere. And so that gave the guests something to argue with. The other thing was, even though that was noted on the menu, I would say 70% of the guests who we served wanted to add a tip anyways. They just could not emotionally, mentally deal with the fact that they were walking out of a restaurant after, let's say, a great experience, and not able to themselves award separately an amount to the server. And it got to the point where when we first laid this in, the check that would print out, you know how you get a check in the restaurants and it'll say what's on it, blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom, it'll say total and then gratuity. There'll be a line for gratuity and then a line for total and then a line for signature. We got rid of all that. All it was the total of the bill and a place for your credit card signature. And you would not believe the number of times. And in order to add a tip manually, the general managers had to go in and actually physically go into the system and add that manually. And oh my God, it was a nightmare. And so finally, the owners relented and said, "Okay, we'll put that line back on there," and that just opened up a whole nother ball of worms or can of worms, because people were like, "Oh, it's like gratuity's already included. Why do you have a gratuity line there?" I mean, it was just you were trying to change the world. And my company has never been the first company through the wall on anything. And so to try and make this successful was it had not going to happen written all over it. And I could see it from 5 miles away, and I'm not saying that I'm brilliant. I say that a lot. But I do tend to be very good at looking beyond the moment. Sometimes to my detriment. It's like, oh, what happens if? I'm a what happens if kind of person. But I also can see when things aren't just going to be right. And so I laid my position out there with the owners, and they didn't give a crap, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. They're the owners. They get to do what they do. And they did. And then I ended up leaving the company shortly after that happened. Not because of that, but... and I did shut up. I stopped being I embraced the new thing, and as I would, because that's what I was being told to do, and I didn't want the servers to, even if the servers were somewhat negative on it, I didn't want to add to that fire, because this is the way it was going to be. So I tried to be positive and blah, blah, blah. Then I ended up leaving a company, and 6 months later, they pulled the whole program, basically because of all the issues we talked about. All the issues I just talked about. And several other restaurants have tried to do this in the Seattle area, I think, and there's some in the Portland area as well. And it's just unsuccessful every time, because you're trying to change the mindset of the diner, and it just, the dining person. It's just not going to happen here in the U.S. They like having that power, that little bit of power. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that's the way it is. So in order to change this system, which they need to, because it really is an imbalance within the within the wages of most restaurants. Is it just has to be universal. I mean, it's literally like they have to have a law that's just no longer tip anymore that all restaurants comply with, because then everybody has to raise their prices to accommodate for that. So you're not looking at one restaurant with one price structure and one with another price structure, because that's what happened. I mean, we priced ourselves out of the market. I mean, suddenly, a $29.95, which is still expensive in a restaurant, $29.95 meal was $36.50. That's a huge jump. People always say, well, why don't you just price, and you see this in comment sections all over, why don't you just price the way to pay a living wage? The reason we don't do that is because not everybody will do that. And so when we're charging $36.50 for a meal and paying a living wage, somebody else around the corner is charging $26.50 and not paying a living wage. And the masses will flock there, even though in the end, when they tip out, they're probably paying about $36.50 per the dinner. But people don't think like that. They have that option to pay or not pay, and they like that option. Guests like that option. So it's an interesting topic. And if any of you are servers out there and have an opinion, lay it on me, because I don't know how. I mean, I think it has to. I know it has to change. I just don't know how it can change piecemeal. Like I said, I think it has to be an across the board thing, and to me, that's an impossible task. I don't know how you're going to get all restaurants in all cities, or in any one city even, really, to do that. I don't know. So, defended my beliefs and use the higher ground to ward off the ignorance of others. I'm not sure I actually used the higher ground, but I did. I said I feel like I was honest in my opinions, and I think I asked honest questions, and I don't think you can't feel bad about that. I don't think. Okay, so 10 of coins in the offering. Embrace or seek the fulfillment that comes with a partnership that will help you attain a great and safe life. I'm going to check and make sure I'm still recording. I am, yay. And I want to make sure is my mic on? Looks like there's, sorry, I'm just checking all this stuff. Yes, it is, okay. As you well know, I've recorded so many videos that end up having shut themselves off because whatever. And I hate that. Okay, so 10 of Pentacles. Embrace or seek the fulfillment that comes with a partnership that will help you attain a great and safe life. Upright, long-term gains and inheritance. Author's personal connection. When I see this card, I recall the time when I was a child in this picture. Oh, he's referring to his own deck. A very, very traditional RWS 10 of Pentacles. So kind of the whole spectrum of family in his card. When I see this card, I recall the time when I was a child in this picture. I have not yet become a grandfather, but I do remember fondly visiting my grandparents when I was young. At the time, we lived in Massachusetts and they lived in North Carolina. My parents and I would travel the 18 hours, oh, that's a long trip, 18 hours by car to spend a couple of weeks with them several times each year. While we were visiting, we would go out to dinner or shopping as a family, and I can see our faces in each of these people on this card. We even had a dog at the time. That could be added to the picture as well. Personal connection. So writing prompt is describe a positive moment with your family. Try to find one involving 3 generations. Okay, so I was thinking, what, 3 generations? That's tough, but no, I got 4. I've got 4, and a really funny story. So the only time, we got together, we didn't go over to my grandparents'. So one set of grandparents lived in Portland when we were there, and another set lived in Seattle. We lived in Seattle for the first 6 years of my life, and then we moved down to Portland. So, but Mom was always the big, she loved Christmas, and so she would do big Thanksgiving dinner. Well, sometimes we do Thanksgiving at grandparents' house, but mostly she would do Thanksgiving dinner here. When her parents got older, it was just easier for her to do it. So Thanksgiving dinner, and then turn around a month later and do Christmas Eve and Christmas. And I'm trying to remember, we would do a turkey on Thanksgiving. Then on Christmas Eve, we would do my mom's famous beef burgundy, which I still make today because I absolutely love it. And then on Christmas Day, it was usually a ham or a turkey. And so Yeah, so I can't tell the story without it kind of giving some backstory. So we lived in a house that was built in 1948. It was atomic style, mid-century, beautiful home with a flat roof in Portland, Oregon, where it rained incessantly. So I hope you all see where I'm going with this. We suffered with leaks all the time. All the time, much to the chagrin of my mother. Now she was a mid-century person, Bauhaus all the way. I mean, she loved the Bauhaus style of art, which is not mid-century, but became, I think, embraced by the mid-century folk. She grew up with the mid-century artists. She was in her own right a mid-century style painter, and so this house was just beyond belief when she found it that this was the house we would move to in Portland, and my brother and I both remember that house fondly. But anyways, we remembered it fondly because it was always having some issues, and the biggest issue was leaks. So fast forward to this one particular Christmas Eve where the four generations, my great grandmother, my grandmother, my grandfather, his sister, so my great aunt, and her husband, my great uncle Kern, the one who died and bailed me out of a fair amount of my debt. Great Uncle Kern, and then my mom and dad, my brother and me. We were young enough not to have partners of our own there, so it was just that kind of immediate family. And right before everybody came over, there was a massive leak that started in the living room, which is where, now we didn't normally gather in the living room, but for family events like this, that's when you hung out in the living room. We were kitchen people. We hung out in the kitchen. So mom is just, mom was highly stressed out during these events. I didn't know it until I got to know her better as an adult. But, to me, it was just, she was just doing what she loved. But no, she wasn't. She was not a natural cook. She was not a natural planner. She planned things, but she wasn't a natural event planner. She just did that. So things like this were just, oh my God, what are we going to do? And so my dad gets out. He figures, okay, no worries. We know exactly where the leak's coming from. It's not going to move. That was the one thing about leaks in the house. When they started, they just stayed where they were. They didn't. Some will travel across the ceiling. We didn't have that kind of roof. So Dad and Scott, my brother, get up on this 10. We had really tall ceilings, 10-foot ladders, and tape like little sandwich bags under these leaks, like a half an hour before everybody's supposed to arrive. And there were, I think, 2 or 3 of them. I can't really remember. One specifically I remember was like right over the main couch area. So they taped these baggies up, and slowly but surely they're catching. And these weren't heavy leaks, so they just drip, drip, that kind of leak. And we figure, Scott, nobody ever looks up in a house. So we're good. Nobody's going to see these things. And grandmothers, grandfathers, they all have, they're all barely wearing. They're all wearing glasses. They, half of them have glaucoma. Nobody's going to see them. So, Dad said, we're good. So the dinner party goes on, and everything's fine. And we eat, and then we go back in the living room for coffee. And I remember looking, I don't know, because I think we were the only ones aware, my brother, me, my dad, and my mom. And I remember going in the living room, looking up, and this one baggie was almost full of water. And you could see the tape starting to pull. And I was like, oh my God, we literally have a water balloon on the frickin' ceiling that's about to drop right on the grandparents. So, and at that point, none of us cannot look up. So, fortunately, I don't think the grandparents ever figured out what was wrong with us that night, but we got the giggles because we were all anticipating it, just this water bomb of icky roof water, splat right in the middle of the living room. We were just waiting for that to happen, and it was just killing us. It was like this constant tickle to our funny bones, and we were just dying. But finally. They never stayed all that late. They'd come over at 4, cocktails. We'd eat at 6, and they were usually heading home by 8. So literally, we're in the living room talking, having coffee, and you could just hear the tick, 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 tick of the clock, tick, 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 just waiting for this bomb to hit. And finally, and it just stayed later than normal. I mean, everything was just, oh my God. And finally, my grandfather says, well, I think it's time we all get rolling. And my entire family just kind of breathed this sigh of relief that, oh my God, okay, the baggie held. So off went the grandparents. Out came the ladders. We went up and did these baggies and put the buckets back on the floor, which is how we usually handle these leaks. And everything got back to normal. But that was, to me, a positive moment with my family involving. It's the question is says involving 3 generations, but this one involved 4. So that's that. And so an offering to the roof leak gods for saying thank you for holding off the disaster that would have that. Now this is one of these stories that even if it had fallen, it would have remained a family story for a lifetime because it would have been so freaking funny. But in the end, we were really glad that it didn't fall. I haven't thought of that in so long. This is what makes this prompt so much fun, is you just kind of start to remember things that you've forgotten for a very long time. Okay, the moon. The moon represents the feelings we need to explore and express. The moon, as an archetype, is the 18th encounter for the Fool, illuminating our deepest feelings so we can understand the emotional framework that gets reinforced, suppressed, and shaped by our family and closest relationships. God, isn't that the truth? And as I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about this card, it's that's all I've been doing this week, and it's so interesting. So upright, dreams, positive emotions. That was the other thing. I had the boss that made my life great at the company, who also left the company. I had the weirdest dream about him as well, and the other night, and that's also what prompted me, because it reminded me we were just it was just I don't even remember what we were doing, but we were just chatting. It was just really good to see him in that dream, and that prompted me as well to reach out to him. Anyways, dreams, positive emotions, intuition, soul, purpose. Make my move. Okay, so the author's personal connection. The moon card represents our connections with our emotions and the experiences that most deeply affect us. When I think of okay, so I'm sorry, I thought I had the wrong card. When I think of the lover's card, I connect it with the person I love. When I think about the feeling of love the person creates and shares with me, I think of this card and the mysteries of the moon. I was present at the birth of my daughter, which represented an intense moment of the moon's energy that began when her mother told me she was pregnant, and it continues to this day every time an important milestone comes and goes into our lives. Comes and goes in our lives. So the writing prompt is, what is one of your most profound emotional experiences? I think the most profound emotional experience I've ever been through was the death of my dad. He had about 4 bad days, and he was in hospice, and they were giving him morphine, and so he just wasn't, that lucid all the time. When he came out of it, he was very lucid, but yeah, anybody who's been through that knows. And so my cousins, everybody got the word, and I don't know why, because this was, we're I guess, we all stay in touch, but we're not an incredibly close family of cousins and aunts and uncles and things like that. And so it surprised me when everybody kind of wanted to rally to come see him, like for the last time or whatever. And so one of my cousins came up from where he was living, and they all kind of converged on, well, not they all, two, I guess. One of them was a priest, and another one was just a businessman. But they came up and chatted with him like all day on Saturday, and it wore him the frick out. And my brother, I had finally called my brother and sister-in-law. I said, I think it's time you guys make the journey up today, which they did. But we couldn't really even see him that day. They also arrived on Saturday because he was just worn out, and the caregivers said, don't. And we said, okay. And so we thought, well, we'll go back tomorrow. So we went on Sunday to visit, and he was lucid enough to say hi to everybody, and we had a brief chat, but he was worn out from the day before. And so that was fine, and he was not comfortable, and so they were kind of shooting him up with the drugs, and we said our goodbyes, and we'll see you later. We'll come back tonight to see you. And he said that'd be great. And so then we kind of all scattered, and then that afternoon, I want to say late afternoon, probably around 5:30, 5 o'clock, one of the hospice workers called and said, I think if you want to say your goodbyes, you need to come right now. And none of us, we knew we knew he was mentally out of it because he was loaded up on morphine, but and none of us just felt like we could do that, and that we wanted to do that. And so, well, I said thank you very much. We'll discuss it here, and I'll get back to you. And we all decided that we just weren't able to do that, which is a very personal decision that everybody makes in their own time. You just, so don't come after me for that thing, for that choice, for those choices. But after about 50 minutes, here I've been caregiving for him for the last 3 years. He was my best friend, really, literally. And I said, I gotta go. I told my brother and his wife, I said, I gotta go. And they said, you go. They chose not to, and I respect that completely. But I had to go. And so I drove, and it was an arduous drive to get there. It was just like no easy way to get to this place. It was just, you had to go down city side streets and then get on the freeway and then get off the freeway and then more side streets. It was just a pain in the ass to get to this place. As the crow flies, it was like 2 seconds. But as the car drives, it was like 25 minutes. And so, I was racing because I just could feel the pressure of wanting to get there. And it's so interesting because just as I was pulling into you pull into one block and then you take a left and then you pull into the parking lot. So I was just pulling into that block, and the whole right side of me just chilled. You know how you get a chill? And it's usually your whole body. Well, that was not the case with me. It was just the whole right side. And in my head I went, he's gone. And right then on the radio, the song by the Rolling Stones called Satisfaction came on. And that was a song Dad and I used to really laugh about. I still don't know what it's about, but he felt it was, I think, sexual in nature for some reason. and so he would kind of always laugh whenever I would sing it out loud when it came on the radio. He thought it was really funny. This is back when it was, just coming out, when it was 70s or whatever, late 60s. I don't know when that song came out. But it cracked me up that was the song that blasted on the radio, and then this chill in my arm, and I was like, oh, God. And so I got to the place, got up to the elevator and walked in the door, and the hospice lady said, well, let me check on him, and then you can go in. I said, okay, thank you. And she went in, and she came out, and she said, he's gone. And I haven't told this story in so long. My brother and sister were there, and we shared it that night, but I don't think I've told anybody else's. So, thanks for the therapy. But yeah, so I was kind of stunned, and I felt really shitty for a long time that I had missed his exit. But in the end, I remember that moment so vividly of the song in my arm, and I said, I don't think I did miss the exit. I think he blew right through me on his way out of this dimension. And I was so thankful that he did that, because over time it's really given me a peace that I wasn't sure I would ever find. So that is one of my most profound emotional experiences. Okay. That's the reading, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. Star and Flurry out.